Assalamu alaikum to everyone watching today. This is our final live stream of Ramadan this year, inshallah. Joining me is Dr. Sahel Hanif, who's our CEO. And today's a special session where you'll be able to ask questions directly to him about NZF, its strategy, its policies, and where he sees it going. Dr. Sahel has been with us for over almost 2 years now as CEO. So he'll be able to, inshallah, share reflections on his time as CEO as well. But without further ado, I'll let him begin by sharing some general themes around zakat and what it means to us in our religion, in our community, and in the UK, what it means for us as well. So, Sheikh Sahel, please take us away for the first
Thank you very much,
section.
Jamal. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Very warm welcome to anyone listening now or anyone listening after this moment. What I'd like to share with you all about zakat, I'll say some themes that are quite important to me as I think about zakat. And then I'll be very open, very happy to develop and explore any of the themes I'll be touching about if you'd like to ask more about them. So zakat, a few headline topics about zakat, which I normally say in the workshops. Number one is that the word zakat means purification and growth. And what we get out of that is that zakat purifies our wealth, because as time passes over our wealth, it's no longer all ours. A part of it belongs to the people in need. They are the rightful owners of that part of our wealth. It's no longer ours, a part of it. It's very important to understand. We're not doing anyone favors by giving zakat. We're just fulfilling a duty. We're giving the property to whom it actually belongs. If we don't do that, and we don't get the zakat out, then our wealth becomes polluted, because we're consuming what isn't all ours. And so the purification, who's the beneficiary of the purification of zakat? It's the giver. The giver benefits. That's why the scholars say the giver should be grateful to the recipient, not look down upon, but be grateful to, because the recipient has given the giver an opportunity to fulfill his or her duty and to purify his or her wealth. The other meaning of the word zakat in Arabic is growth. And that's because what's the real way to get growth in your money? Is it by putting it somewhere where you'll be given interest? Or is it by spending it charitably for the sake of Allah? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, وَمَا آتَيْتُم مِّن رِبًا لِيَرْبُوَ فِي أَمْوَالِ النَّاسِ فَلَا يَرْبُو عِنْدَ اللَّهِ وَمَا آتَيْتُم مِّن زَكَاةٍ تُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَ اللَّهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُضْعِفُونَ. Whatever you give of riba, of usury, of interest, seeking thereby to grow your wealth, it has no growth according to Allah or with Allah. Allah does not assign any growth to it. But that which you spend of zakat, seeking thereby literally the face of Allah, the closeness to Allah, the being of Allah, then those people, they are the true multipliers. True growth is in charity. يَمْحَقُ اللَّهُ الرِّبَى وَيُرْبِي الصَّدَقَاتِ. Also in the Holy Quran, Allah obliterates usury and He grows charity. So who's the beneficiary of zakat? Whose money is being purified? Whose wealth is growing? Who is being blessed? Who is being protected? It's the giver. It's an important thing to keep in mind. A second thing I always like to say about charitable giving when introducing zakat is that care for the needy and downtrodden is something emphasized in the Holy Quran right from the early revelations to our Prophet ﷺ, throughout the Meccan period of his mission, before zakat was actually taught, which happened in Medina. So what you find is very early on, Islam challenged its society. The Quran was an economic challenge right from the beginning of the revelation. People were told that there is a right in wealth that belongs to the people who are in need, or orphans, or refugees. And if they're not given their right, Allah will ask the wealthy about this on Judgment Day. That's why before there was anything called zakat, with the rules that we know about, we were already told about the believers that they were alladina fi amwalihim haqqun ma'lum lis-sa'ili wal mahrum, that the believers are those in whose wealth is a known right that can be sought by those who wish to ask and those who are unable to ask. Believers already always knew, well, some of my money has to be put aside, right from the earliest times of Islam. Very important to understand. The third thing to say about zakat is that zakat, when it was taught with the rules that we know, which was when the Prophet ﷺ migrated to Medina, it was one of this beautiful, powerful institution called the five pillars of Islam. And the five pillars are pillars that form community under God. So prayer is not just a private act. We're told to pray in group. We're told to establish mosques for the sake of prayer. We are told to gather in spaces which will bring us together as a community under Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fasting, we're told to eat together. We are told to fill our mosques in the month of Ramadan. Hajj, we're told to travel together to witness the global community. And so zakat is one of these pillars about coming together in community under God. That's why zakat has two constraints. It's not charity in general. It's a specific form of charity to form community under God. And that's why zakat is only paid to Muslims, because the message of zakat is that faith is a family. When two people believe in Allah and His Messenger, God bless him and give him peace, a tie is created between these two people. The tie is sacred. It has to be honored. And the honoring of that tie is zakat. The other interesting thing about zakat in the classical fiqh is that it's meant to be paid in the area where you live. Some scholars call this fard, other scholars call this sunnah. But zakat is meant to be paid in the area where you live because it's meant to create within us this concern about who are the believers around us, what are their needs, how can we be there for them, how do we form a community where we actually live, a community nourished through ties of zakat. So that's just some introductory remarks about zakat as an institution. A little bit about NZF. NZF has been around for just over 11 years. We're the only organization to collect and distribute zakat across the United Kingdom. NZF, we've helped, in this last, if you want to get a sense of it, in the last year, we distributed £6 million across the United Kingdom, helping over 17,000 people. Is there need in the UK? There's a lot of need in the UK. Muslim Census, in a recent survey, they found that 1 in 5 Muslims use food banks, 1 in 4 asked for zakat, 1 in 3 skipped meals to pay for bills, 65% went into debt to pay for bills. There is poverty in the UK. I was in Manchester, well, just today actually, and yesterday. Really surprising stories of poverty amongst university students. I met the university Muslim chaplain, and he literally said a student came up to him saying literally that the student had no food. And this chaplain approached 2 charities to create a fund just for university students in Manchester. And he's already run out of the money that was assigned to the fund. And to corroborate that, I met with a mosque head who said every year for years they've been having free iftars, but this year they saw a very large group of students coming regularly to these iftars, and that these iftars really are the only proper meal that these people are having. So what I'll say is there's poverty in our community in places we might not realize. We have the asylum community, people coming largely from the Muslim world, people escaping very difficult situations, sometimes families with children. Sometimes they're brought over on boats at knife point, and I met a couple that were brought over like that. I mean, they didn't know that was how they were going to come. It was a difficult and scary journey for them. They have very, very little. Who's going to be there for them if the Muslim community is not there for them? Government support is hard to apply for, comes very slowly, and when it comes, it's very little for these refugees, who are the Ibn Sabil, the Quran talks about as zakat recipients. We have victims of trafficking. who are trafficked, and they come out of very difficult, exploitative relationships with very little. Who's going to be there for them if the community of Muslims is not there for them? We have ordinary families who are just getting by, and then before and in a period of rising rampant inflation, in a period of um, rising energy bills, and then one member of the couple becomes sick, other couple becomes a carer, and before you know it, they can't keep up with their bills anymore. Anxiety: can they pay the bills? Can they keep up with rent? Will they be kicked out of their accommodation? Very scary times. If you imagine you or your brother or your sister or your mum or your dad with that level of anxiety, is that right? Is it right for us to say, well, that's not my problem? It's absolutely our problem. I was with somebody also in my trip up north. I met a partner of ours at Bradford Foundation Trust. They do a lot of grassroots support, largely for the asylum community. But the lady, their main caseworker, she said what they've seen a rise of recently is people on benefits who are struggling, because the benefits, she was saying they get £300 for the month. She was saying she mentioned the case of a lady with children, and when you take out the energy bills, and then you talk about the food costs, and she said she didn't have enough to buy. She was talking about clothes for the kids or food for the kids. So it's really basic things. People on benefits which haven't kept up with inflation, bills, and the other things. In fact, we're a partner on a campaign with Trussell Trust and Joseph Rowntree, just to campaign on this very simple point based on Joseph Rowntree's research that 90% of people on benefits simply can't keep up with their basic essentials. So there's poverty in our midst, sometimes in very areas we wouldn't expect, and sometimes in areas that we would expect. Female victims of domestic violence. So if you speak to people on the ground, again, the gentleman I spoke to yesterday, who runs one of the major mosques in Manchester, he said he also owns a restaurant. He said he went to a meat shop to get meat for the restaurant, and he said there was a shop next door with a really long queue, and the queue went all the way around the corner. And he walked into the meat shop. He said, well, what's that shop? It looks very popular. And he said there were Muslims lined up and people in hijab and family, just a long queue of people. And he's told, oh, that's a food bank. And so it's just, it is a difficult time. And it's not right to say, well, they're not on the streets, they're not homeless, or they're not naked, or they don't, they're not starving on the streets. Zakat is not just once they're starving on the streets, you're there for them. It's when they're crying behind the closed doors of their homes because they don't know about next month's bills. That's when you're meant to catch them. And if you catch them before that, that's even better. In the words of the Holy Quran, the best people to help actually with zakat and sadaqah are the people that don't ask, but they're in great need and they have self-respect. A lot of our community are like that, and we have to find creative ways to reach them. They shouldn't have to beg. If they've begged, we've already failed them as a community. On the asylum front, again, our partner in Bradford, they said part of when they started, it was because the only community people who were offering support to the asylum seekers, a lot of whom come to Bradford, the Home Office sends them out of the expensive places like London to places which are cheaper for them to support them in. The only community people there to help them were the churches, the Christian community institutions. And so some of these people become Christians, and they wonder, well, where's the Muslim community? They've come from the Muslim world with their Muslim faith, but there's no Muslim faith community there for them. So that's a problem. So that's all I'll say. I'll say the need is real. The need is larger than we might imagine or realize if we're not part of grassroots service provision. The message of zakat is about helping us see to our needs, the needs of the faith community, making belonging to the Muslim Ummah meaningful, because not everybody in our communities will walk into a mosque. Not everyone in our communities is going to watch the YouTube videos that you and I might enjoy and find a renewal of faith through, but they're still Muslims and they still belong to us. Just like not everyone in your family might, meet week to week. Some people might be estranged in our families, but they're still family members and they still have a right and we still have a duty of care towards them. And so, similarly, we need to find a way to make all Muslims feel welcome, all Muslims feel cared for, all Muslims feel proud to belong to this community. If we don't, we have failed them. This future, which the message of zakat very much guides us to, sometimes I call it in short in my own narrative, I call it the zakat system. And what I mean by that very simply is all Muslims, all over this UK, which we are representative of and we are all have communities in, wherever they should feel welcome. They should feel as they lay their bed at night, I'm happy I'm a Muslim, I'm part of a community that cares. I might have my job today, but if I lose it tomorrow, I know I have a community that cares. It's very, very important. It's our absolute pillar and duty. And lastly, this is what preserves faith. The da'wah of our Prophet ﷺ was a da'wah of communal institutions. Because if these institutions work, people will stay Muslim and pass on Islam through community. Imagine the difficulty of a child being brought up in a broken home. No dad, mum is always working and stressed and uncertainty, moving from home to home. And just imagine in your picture the idea of a stereotypical broken home and the challenges of a child being brought up in that environment, gangs and different types of influences and so on. And imagine another thing of a stereotypical, what you might call safe home, together home, where there's love and there's neighborliness and there's grandparents and there's uncles and there's family. Uh, Imagine now that's how would you rather learn about your faith? Think of community like that. You can either learn about your faith in a community where there's groups and there's mosques and there's football clubs and there's charity and there's belonging, and wherever you look there's ways to enhance and teach you about your faith. Would you like that future for our children? Or would you like a future for our children where they learn about their faith as strangers, as outcasts, as there's no community there for you? You have to do it all by yourself. Zakat, Salat, the 5 pillars, they create community for us. So the next generation will learn about Allah and His Messenger in that comfort. That's all I'll say about why the zakat, building a zakat network of solidarity is so important. It cares for us today and it provides a safe home for the next generation to learn about their religion. That's all I want to say in terms of introductory remarks.
Thank you, Sheikh. I think there has been a couple of questions that have come in pertinent to your brief talk there. So we have one question that is asking, has there been an increase in applications in recent years due to the cost of living crisis? And then secondly, linked to that, do the donations that we get at NZF, do they match the total amount that is requested?
Yeah, that's a really excellent questions. So we have seen a rise in applications. So last year we saw an approximate doubling of the year before. Last year we received on average an application for zakat 1 every 40 minutes. This year we're 3.5 months in. We've seen an increase over last year, quite a notable one. In Ramadan or in March, just in March of this year, we received an application for zakat 1 every 12 minutes. We've never, ever, 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 ever seen anything like that. In terms of our zakat income, keeping up with the applications, our zakat income has always sufficed. There was a time in about 2020 where we ran a campaign about running out of zakat, and alhamdulillah, the community stepped up, and in fact, we had a good grant from Islamic Relief as well to ensure that there was enough zakat for the community then. But with this current level of people asking, it appears we will not be able, we will struggle greatly to have the zakat income to see to the levels that we're seeing right now. And that's why we do need community to step up. We do need people to step up, because the amount of people asking it is really very high. And without an extra stepping up, it will be difficult to see to everyone's needs.
No. From me, actually, with regard to the demand, where do you see and how do you see NZF tackling this problem in the next kind of 5 years? Where do you see the organization going in terms of being able to deal with the potentially ever increasing demand if things carry on the way they are?
So there's a few things. If I could talk about the present first of all. So in the present, we help people in three distinct ways. We help people with hardship grants, which are cash grants to help them with their basic expenses. It's one of the most innovative and large-scale projects of this sort within the United Kingdom, just in general. We help people with shelter, with housing support to secure shelter, and we help people with training so they can get into employment. Those are three key ways that we help people today. In terms of tomorrow, what we need to crack in order to move towards the future I've described, we need to crack making sure people have access. People have access to support, and it's close to them, it's near to them, and it connects them to their communities with whom they can get ongoing connection and support. To facilitate this, we are now trying to find ways to embed our zakat support within the community infrastructure. So we've partnered currently with a mosque in London, with an asylum specialist sort of partner in Bradford and in Northern Ireland, and with a madrasa charity project in Birmingham, to explore how we can embed our support within community infrastructure. So people will not just find zakat, but find the mosque. They won't just find the zakat, but they'll find a community social network that they can be a part of and find themselves through. The learnings from this initial pilot have been quite encouraging. We're trying to develop that further, so people can find zakat support within their community infrastructure. That's going to be very important. We're trying to find ways to allow people to find more about local needs in virtual ways, to find about, within 5 miles of my home, there's 3 families who are struggling with their rent. I want to help them right now. We're trying to find ways to facilitate that. We're trying to find ways now to facilitate what I call a menu of training options. So if people want to be active in their communities, what can they do? If you want to fundraise, what can you do? If you want to help people find support, what can you do? If you want to assist in a grassroots local zakat project, what can you, just to give you a set of options and training and connecting you so you can be active in your community. This is important to us, because without these steps, we will not be able to catch people before they beg. And our job is to catch people before they have to be forced to beg. Those are some things. And the last thing about the future is, which we've already started, is to really amplify the work of our community by representing our community in public affairs, in policy setting, in public opinion, to really represent our community, the efforts Muslims are doing, the good work, the struggles, because we are in a position we should be able to say, do you know, in this postcode, there's a very high number of single mothers applying. Maybe we can use that knowledge to get other forms of service provision to Muslims in those areas, because we are positioned for that. So these are some areas we can enhance, amplify, and support our community to really move towards a future where all Muslims feel connected through zakat.
Thank you, Sheikh. Just a question now on broadly the structure of NZF and how it works, but specifically How does NZF work with global NZFs and the other NZFs around the world, and what's that relationship like?
So NZF started in the United Kingdom, but that led to what I call a worldwide movement towards championing local zakat, especially in areas where Muslims are a minority, and I would say almost their future as a faith community rests on their ability to form strong infrastructure of support and solidarity. So we have an NZF in Canada, in Australia. It started in New Zealand last year. We have an NZF in the Netherlands that started, I think, just over 2 years ago. We have an NZF in Switzerland that started, I think, almost 2 years ago. We have an NZF in Germany that started about a month ago. NZF in Switzerland this Ramadan extended support to Muslims in France. France being a country where it might be difficult and not so simple to set up a structure like this.
Yeah.
How do we connect and cooperate? We meet regularly to share ideas, strategies, plans, and we offer support to each other where we might have expertise, and we explore ways to pull together resources to amplify our work. And there's a worldwide body which is there to coordinate this effort and to drive an agenda of growth, of how we can take this work into new territories and new areas.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. Next, the question for you is around one of the, obviously the USP that NZF has is and one of the things that comes up even in my role again and again is we hear from people who say that the need for our money is greater abroad. Now, you spoke at the beginning about people in the UK, even when there is a welfare state, still being in need. But what would you say that even when that's the case, the situation abroad in Muslim countries specifically is still so much worse?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things we can say and should stress here. The most important thing I'd like to start with is this is not a zero-sum game, and it's not an either or an or. What we have is, as believers, as moral human beings, we have a set of responsibilities we have to manage. Think about yourself. You owe something to your boss because you have a contract if you're an employee somewhere. You owe something to your parents if you're a child, they're elderly, and you owe them some care and company. You owe something to your wife. Again, I'm speaking as a man, or to your husband, to your spouse, which is some duties of care. Could be financial, could be time, could be a service of some sort. You owe something to your children. So if we were to talk about the importance of care for children, that does not suddenly obliterate our other responsibilities. And neither can you devote yourself wholly to one and forget the other. So the point of being a moral human being is being aware of one's responsibilities and seeing to them in a way that is correct, that is fair, that allows you to see what you have to do and not to neglect. What we cannot do is be neglectful of our duties.
Yeah.
The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wassalam, kafa bil mar'i ithman an yudayyi'a man ya'ul. It's a sufficient sin for a man to squander those who are under his care. And so this is an important thing to always realize. We cannot afford to be neglectful of responsibilities. So what I've highlighted today in the topic of zakat, as explored and explained by our scholars of jurisprudence, is that believers who are near us have a particular tie, and we owe them a particular duty of care. That's something in sacred law, the right of the neighbor in faith, we can call it. And so we have to just be conscious of that before saying, yeah, but what about? That's not the point right now. The point is there is a right here. Just let that sink in.
Yeah.
The neighbor in faith has a right. What are we going to do collectively to see to that right? Think of it as a collective responsibility. What are we going to do about it? Just keep that in its place. And then our global community have a right. What are we going to do about that as a global community? That has a place. Family has a right. If you have uncles, cousins, uncles, aunties, grandparents who live overseas, they have a right. Blood is a very sacred tie in Islam. So let each of these rights sink in. So your family right, think of it as a family responsibility. As a family, what are we going to do about it? In your family conversations. The global ummah, that's a global collective responsibility. What are you going to do about it as a global ummah? And your UK community or your London community or your Manchester community, what are you going to do as a Manchester community or UK? Just let them all sink in as rights. Don't start immediately, well, what about and more? It's not about more or less. It's about registers of duties. We have to juggle all of them as moral human beings. And if we do that, we will find solutions. So when we talk about our local needs, then what are we doing to make sure that there is something in place for them? And maybe one year your zakat goes to your cousin who's in Pakistan, who's about to get married but actually got robbed and is in big trouble. Only you can know their need. Maybe you should help your cousin this Ramadan. But that doesn't take your eye off what's happening in our community here. Maybe you still share the messages. Maybe you
Yeah,
encourage other friends, give your zakat to the community here. But this year, you're looking after your cousin in Pakistan. That's fine. You're acting as a moral agent. You've got all your registers of responsibility. You're not keeping your eye off the ball and you're seeing what you can do in each of these areas. If we talk like that, it's not zero sum, it's not either or. It's just making sure that we keep the conversation alive and we do our part and realize that there is a right here. If we look at it like that, I don't think we need to enter into uh, any other sort of conversation here. The last thing I will add is where need is greater is something that some scholars countenance to take zakat overseas, other scholars don't. So there's a spectrum here for us to explore. But do think about what you can do. If you're taking zakat to particular areas, just explore. Is the charity well, we're dealing with any charity really. Is it reliable? Are they the most expert to offering need in that particular place that you're giving the charity? Is the impact going to be the impact that you're looking for? What else could you be doing to support that might be more impactful, etc.? Just be a moral conscious agent in how you distribute your work, but don't ever think of either or, and don't ever say what about. What
yeah,
about is good, but that doesn't solve the problem of your neighbor who might be kicked out of their home. Give them registers of
yeah.
responsibility and then see what you can do. And maybe in one year, the best thing you can do is just share messages to others because your funds have another right that you feel in this year is more important. But don't keep your eye off the ball. This is my advice to everybody.
Thank you. And a follow-up question just on that. You mentioned around a neighbor or a cousin, and this is something that comes up sometimes as well, when people are getting in touch with us and asking questions. Burden on the zakat giver when it comes to giving zakat to someone directly, on figuring out whether they're eligible. Obviously, rigorous checks, and we have teams going through people's identification documents, their bank statements, their open banking, all that kind of stuff, just to make sure that they are who they say they are and they are eligible. But if somebody is giving to a cousin, a neighbor, whatever it might be, people sometimes ask, how much do I have to look into their financial state? What's the burden on me?
Yeah, so if you're helping someone directly, yeah, you have no duty of going through a charity or a government body. You can give your zakat directly to someone in need. All you have to do, so the point of zakat, as I've hinted at, is forming a tie of solidarity and support amongst the believers. So the person must feel dignified in this exchange. You don't have to belittle people as you give them zakat. What will belittle them is you say to your mate who you've been friends with since childhood, show me your bank balance now, and let me look at your rent contract just to make sure it's what it is, and
Mm,
because you'll break up your friendship, he'll be insulted by you. You have not helped him at all. You've only hurt and wounded and broken a relationship with that
yeah,
kind of communication. So what you have to do has to be respectful, tactful, tasteful. You want to, if it's a good friend, you might know already what's going on because you know them. If it's a semi friend, acquaintance, you might have friends in common. Maybe you ask them, well, what's the story? What have you heard? What exactly is the struggle? Maybe you ask their family member who knows them. There's ways you can find out, but you have to find out something. You can't just have no effort. You have to find out something that makes you believe the person is most likely zakat eligible. Uh, what does it mean on a technicality? That you're estimating, without knowing the details, you're estimating
Yeah.
that their surplus holdings minus liabilities takes them below a nisab threshold. You can, you know, uh, let's call it £400 for now, just to keep it simple. And if you want to keep it even more simple, just are they struggling? Are they people who are genuinely struggling, just getting by on their basics? Then clearly they deserve support. You have to feel this is most likely the case. If it turns out you're wrong after you've paid, that really they had a savings you didn't know about and they're all right, your zakat is still valid as long as you made some effort to look at some evidence that make you feel they're most likely of the description that I've said, then it's a valid payment. We at NZF, we don't have personal relationships.
Yeah.
We're a sort of impersonal entity. And we represent the trust of lots of givers. And people come to us without this burden of a friendship that is getting too, burdened by the issue. They're coming to us for zakat. So for this reason, for the reason of these relationships we manage with recipients all over the country and givers all over the country, we do have a burden of investigating further
Yeah.
than an individual might have to do. So we do ask for bank statements, and we do ask for tenancy agreements, and we do ask for universal credit documentation. We do ask for photo ID. We do need proof of address. So we do all of that because we have to fulfill a trust at a larger scale, and we don't know these individuals on a personal basis, so we have to find out. So that's why we do dig deeper to fulfill a trust, but why you as an individual do not have to go that far, and it's sufficient for you to do what I've said.
Okay, alhamdulillah. We have one question from YouTube. In what way do NZF find centres or facilities to connect to? For example, say in Leicester, how would you go about finding a community to establish a partnership between NZF and that centre or mosque?
Yeah, so at this stage, we are piloting. And so what we're currently doing is having conversations now about the learnings from our current pilots. One of them started a year ago, one of them started 5 months ago. And so we're just concluding the learnings now. That's at the end. While we're doing that, we're just talking to people in various areas. I had a good conversation in Manchester and in other areas. And then we're going to grow the pilot one at a time for now to, again, just extend our learnings before going in a more wider way. The challenge we have is we still have to distribute zakat to our global, our online service, if you like, our nationwide service, which is being strained, as you've heard today. And we have to have some zakat to distribute in these local pilots so we can learn about how to develop this going forward. So that's all I'll say. It's through conversation, it's through learning, it's through exploring the network. If you are someone who is part of a network, then just reach out, and we're very happy to talk to you about the possibility of learning more about Leicester and how we can support Muslims in Leicester.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Just seeing if there's any more questions. No questions at the moment. We are coming up to the end. If you could, Sheikh Sahel, share some reflections on, we're in the final 10 days of Ramadan now. Just your experiences of this Ramadan. How has it been for NZF in terms of applications, in terms of donors, your experience in your second Ramadan as CEO of NZF, any reflections maybe compared to last year as well?
Yeah, sure. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So, Alhamdulillah, Ramadan is always a it's a blessed period for the whole community, of course. It's a month of blessings. Part of the interesting blessings of this month is that it's the month of Sadaqah. We know that from the Sunnah. And so there's a lot of giving that happens in Ramadan across the board, across registered charities, non-registered charities, well-known bodies, obscure bodies, everything in between, direct giving. It's a month of incredible giving. And so that's just something to note and just really be quite amazed by how much giving happens in Ramadan. It's remarkable. How much giving happens in the last 10 days. How much giving happens in the last 4 days of the last 10 days. It's really a phenomenal movement of wealth that happens across our community, UK, international. It's something just to marvel at, really. Uh, so much concern people have about calculating their zakat, wanting to learn, wanting to make sure that they're doing it right. Some people, they want to manage funds so they can make sure their saving for their house is not affected by zakat, but that's still a concern, trying to do things right. Others people are uncertain and they, sorry, do you want to say something?
No, no, please carry on.
Oh, sorry. And then other people are unsure about something, and then they, to be on the safe side, they want to, you know, maybe pay on the safe side. And because
Yeah,
I was having dinner at this iftar gathering in up north just 2 nights ago, I was with a couple and at this iftar party, and they wanted to know about zakat, and they said, "This is how we do it." And I said, "What about the pensions?" And then I looked up their scheme, and then I looked up the portfolio, and then I emailed Mufti Faraz, and I said, "Is this how you would use it?" And all this while we were at dinner. And alhamdulillah, Mufti Faraz was very quick. He gave me back an answer, and then I gave them. But they wanted to be safe. They had no issues with it about percentages
yeah,
and so on. So just a really interesting period of some people trying to manage their money wiser. Some people just wanted just to be safe. Other people wanted to do it's a minimum, but what they feel comfortable with. But just it's a spectrum of people who are trying to be conscientious. So that's very warming to see.
yeah.
We find what's also interesting is in the wider space, as I'm saying, the non-Muslim space, there's a curiosity about Ramadan and Muslim giving. So I've seen media interests about what's happening in the Muslim space. I attended an iftar yesterday at the Manchester City. Sorry, they're very sensitive up there. Which club you're talking about? Manchester City Football Club. And they were saying it's not United here, but then they didn't realize that Etihad means United, really, which is the name of their stadium, but it's an Arabic word.
Yeah.
So, but it was so fascinating, which was the outreach. And the Man City Football Club has an incredibly impressive outreach program
Mm.
for faith communities. They have a Muslim chaplain. They encourage all of their staff to fast the first day of Ramadan. They did a group iftar. This is the staff. I'm not talking about the players.
Mm.
And they have a Muslim chaplain. They have a branded Man City Puma hijab for girls. So just to encourage
Yeah.
Muslim community to join football, boys, girls,
Yeah.
at a young age, so that they'll feel welcome. They have it's just very interesting period of people wanting to learn more about Ramadan, Muslim giving, Muslim charities, inclusion. That's heartwarming to see. A lot of interest, good conversations. And then, like I said, on the other side as well, there is Muslim need. Muslim need is never amplified in Ramadan. It's all year long. But sometimes Muslims need hope that their voice will be heard in Ramadan.
Yeah.
So they'll show up in their mosques and then the iftars and applying, to projects like NZF in numbers that they wouldn't get outside of Ramadan, because there's a hope of being heard. Because so
Mm.
much marketing is going around, right, about uh, different charitable projects. So naturally, then people need to hear more about what the community has to offer, and that's
Mm.
why there's a rush in general in various projects in Ramadan, because they've heard more and they're hoping
Yeah.
they'll be heard as well. So all of this is what's happening. And just on a personal note, what I find interesting, uplifting, enriching is just because it's a time of outreach and education, I myself get more active in getting out, going to mosques, speaking to networks. And so I find this as a time of outreach, communication, conversation, travel. Not a regular Ramadan I was used to, much less what I might call personal worship, to be honest. But in terms of communal worship and the hope of communal du'as, people remembering you, people mentioning you. That's heartwarming as well, to be
Yeah,
honest. These are different reflections about Ramadan as
yeah.
I've seen it just now.
Alhamdulillah. You just watching the questions that people have for you, and um, if people aren't aware, one of the as well as providing a way for people to pay their zakat and a way for people to apply for zakat support, one of the things that NZF does is to educate. And so we have a lot of them, most of them in the Ramadan season, but all year round we will have workshops and seminars um, around the corporate community, mosques, different community groups as well. Um, and with regards to that, you mentioned the concern people have. Um, what are that come up again and again in these workshops that you think people really need to know, and what advice would you give for people engaging with NZF and our services, which I'll share in the comments. But what advice would you give to people who do have that concern, and you find a lot of people
Which concern?
concern about calculating their zakat correctly. You find
Hmm.
people in
Hmm.
that Ramadan season start to panic a bit and
Yeah, yeah,
have
sure.
all their questions and ask around with friends who might know and these kind of things. So, what advice would you give to people to kind of get their affairs in order when it comes to zakat?
Well, I always point people to the website. It really is on this thing, and I inherited this. I have no
Mm.
claim of glory in this at all. It's something that was built really well, which is the calculation services on the website are absolutely
Yeah,
fabulous. There's a calculator. It's very smart, very intelligent. It's got a lot of research embedded into it. It's a really smart calculator. It'll take you, just go through it step by step by step by step. Just go to NZF homepage, nzf.org.uk. Click on calculate. You've got all these options on top. There's the calculator. There's free consultations you can book. There's free guides you can download. There's a knowledge bank with excellent source of pre-prepared answers to questions. You can just ask a question tab, and you'll get emailed your answer. Really, you can't go wrong with these services on the NZF website. If I can go back to one answer, sorry, Jamal, I might go off topic, but I said about how to make partnerships
yeah,
with centers in Leicester. I was talking about future plans about ways to find embedded support in community, but we can do partnerships today, very easily. There's a community project in High Wycombe who what they've done really simply, and you can literally do this today. You can set it up. We still have 5 days of Ramadan left or so. What they did was they set up a Just Giving page for Zakat to channel through NZF, and they wanted to spend that money in High Wycombe. And I explained to them things we're developing for the future, not all in place right now. But I said it's really simple. Why not do the crowd fund? Whatever you raise, why don't you just be a referral partner? Meaning, tell your community, if you need help with hardship grants or with shelter or with
yeah,
training, come to us. We'll help you fill in an application. Really simple. And over the next 12 months, if you do that, you will spend the amount of money you've raised in High Wycombe. That's it. It's really simple, not complicated at all. So there's any centre here in Leicester or elsewhere
yeah,
where you'd want to be a source for helping people access Zakat funds for the purposes that I've highlighted, you can literally do that today. Just
yeah,
reach out to us, learn how the application, because application is not always easy. Imagine someone not very computer literate, not very English literate. It's not always that easy, to be honest. Upload documents, click page to page, but you might become proficient at this. That's a service. You don't need to have the money or the fundraising. Just learn how to do online forms. And then what you can do is tell people every Saturday from this time to this time in mosque such and such, they can come and you'll help them. Fill out a form. That's a huge service. You can do that just today. That's a community partnership we can strike up. And then if you want to facilitate fundraising for that, why don't you set up a Just Giving page literally today? You got 7 days left in Ramadan. Maybe you'll hit a £10,000 target. It'll make a huge difference, and you can help people throughout the year. Very easy. Well, let's strike the partnership now. Give them an email, Jamal. There you go. Give them something they can write to learn how to do this.
we'll share that in the comments now. Thank you for your questions and your time as well, Sheikh Sahel. We're coming up to the end of the stream. If anybody has any final questions, please do get in touch. Very, very briefly, I'll mention something that Sheikh Sahel just touched on. was the one-to-one consultations that we offer. This really is, and again, this is all bias aside, it really is a brilliant service where you're able to speak with an expert, a mufti, um, an expert in zakat matters if you have financial arrangements that make it slightly trickier for you to do your zakat calculation. And even if you don't have complicated questions and your questions are quite simple, but you just rather speak to a human being about them and talk them through, if you go to our website, I will share the link with you in the comments, but if you just go to calculate and then click free consultations, there are still slots remaining for the rest of this month,
Capital
alhamdulillah.
exchange
And,
is
and,
good.
and you will get through, once you have booked that, you can either have a phone call scheduled in, or you can have a kind of Google Meet video call with the Mufti. It's an invaluable service that we offer there, and it's completely free as well. It's something that I benefited from long before I joined NZF, and I do highly recommend it for people who are looking for kind of trusted scholars to ask their zakat questions to. So I'll share the links with everyone in the comments. That's the Give a Support email for any concerns you have about donating or any questions you want to ask about our policies. And then the consultations link will be just beneath that. Thank you for your time, everyone who watched, everyone who asked questions. Sheikh Sahel, thank you for your time. I know you've been traveling a lot and must be very tired from that, so appreciate you coming on as well. It's coming close to 7 o'clock, so people probably want to head to the kitchen fairly soon to start preparing and helping others prepare as well, inshallah. So we'll let everyone get on with their evening. May Allah accept all of your fasting and your ibadah, and inshallah we all reach Eid this year as well, and may Allah accept everything that we do from now until then. That's it from our side. Wa alaikum assalam.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.